Now that we've created our test window, let's take some time to look at the life cycle of the window itself. We'll open up our test window in MonoDevelop. Below the init method, let's go down and create a new method that'll get triggered whenever the window gets focused. We'll call this private, its return type will be void, and we'll call it onFocus. Inside, we'll create a debug log statement that simply states onFocus. Next, let's copy this method and paste it below. Here, we're going to change the method to say onLostFocus, and we'll change the debug log statement to onLostFocus as well. Now, let's save this and go back into the Unity editor. We'll open up our console so that we can see these changes. If we go ahead and open up the test window, you'll see that onFocus is being called. If we click outside of the window, you'll see that LostFocus gets called as well. If we go back and reopen the window, onFocus is called. Let's go ahead and dock this window, and let's clear everything that's in the console. Now you can see that our window again has lost focus. And if you go through and simply click around the UI, you can test for things that would trigger a lost focus event. Now let's go back into our code and see if we can get some more information when our window is actually in focus. Let's go ahead and change the log statement in onFocus. We're going to call this currently selected. Next, we're going to look at the selection class's ActiveGameObject property. And from here, we'll get the name of the ActiveGameObject. The selection class allows us to see what's currently selected inside of the IDE. There is a getter for the ActiveGameObject, and if the currently selected object is a game object, it'll return a reference to that, and from there we can pull out the name. Let's save this and go back into Unity. Let's select our new sprite and click inside of our test window. As you can see, the currently selected object says new sprite, but we also got an error. So let's take a look at what happened. Originally, it didn't have a reference to anything when the window gained focus. Let's try this again. We'll deselect the new sprite and now click on the test window. Since no game object is in focus, this code is going to continue to throw an error. Let's go ahead and try to clean this up a little bit more. We can clear the console and go back into MonoDevelop. At the top of our class, let's add a new property so we can store the current selection. We'll make this a private game object, and we'll call it currentSelection. Next, we'll create a method so that we can draw stuff to the GUI layout. We'll take advantage of the built-in onGUI method that gets called whenever the GUI for this window is rendered. Let's cut the debug log statement from onFocus and paste it in the onGUI. Next, we're going to set this to the current selection which we defined previously. And now in onFocus, let's set current selection to equal the selection ActiveGameObject. Now we know from previous attempts to test this that it's going to throw an error if there's no game object. So let's go ahead and copy the current selection variable name and create a new condition to see if the current selection is not equal to null. In this case, we'll output the current selection by name. We'll save our code, and now let's go back into Unity. If we go in the window, nothing will happen because we don't have anything selected. If we select the sprite and go back to the window, you'll now see that the current selection is saying new sprite. Let's take a look at one last thing to help us work with our window. Right now, let's just close the window, clear our console, and go back into MonoDevelop. Let's open up the Hello World editor. And here we're going to change the button, instead of saying click me, to say open test window. In order for us to open the test window, we're going to need to get a reference of the window. So here, we'll simply tell the editor window to get a reference to the window, and we'll pass in a type of test window. Let's save this, go back into Unity, click on our new sprite, and now our button should say Open Test Window. Let's click this, and you'll see that our window is now open. And now we have a better idea of how the window is able to see what's going on inside of the editor, the window's own life cycle, from having focus to losing focus to also drawing GUI elements, as well as how to open the window externally from another script by triggering it with a button.